Welcome, everybody. Hello. Thanks so much for being here. This is Spirit Matters, your daily spiritual check-in with the Bhakti Center, and we're so glad that you're here. My name is Dal Grunga, and I'm here with Chuta Gopi. Our tri-host, Kishore Chandra, will not be able to join us this morning, but we love him, and we'll see him again soon. How you doing, Chuta?
Blessed, sheltered.
Blessed, sheltered, and held together by the Band-Aid of God's mercy, which is fantastic. Announcements. Dana K's making announcements. Yeah, sure. Why not? We got lots of announcements. We're launching a 100-hour and 300-hour Ayurveda coaching, counseling, training, certification. For anybody that wants to teach, incorporate it into their toolbox, or just learn themselves principles of Ayurvedic lifestyles and thinking. Check it out at bhakticenter.org. We're also launching an in-person, that Ayurveda training is in-person and online as a hybrid. So you can take it from wherever you are. Or if you're in the city and want to come in person, you can come and check that out. We're also doing yoga teacher training, 200-hour certified yoga teacher training starting in the spring. Whether you want to be a yoga teacher or not, it's a beautiful way of upgrading just your spiritual practice, because they do so much more than just yoga. You find community and you dive into yoga philosophy and lifestyle and thinking. Those are two things. And we have lots of retreats coming up. A couple of retreats: India, Puerto Rico with Janavi, Costa Rica with Rukmini Walker. Check them out. Just go to our website. You'll find cool stuff. All right, that's my announcements. Any announcements for your side, Achuta?
He's still here.
We are still here. That's a good sign. All right. So since we're here, should we to move on from here and and go forth onward?
Let's do
Where
it.
where were we?
We were still in chapter 3, text 35.
We were.
And we were just kind of going with that verse. But I think we can move to 36 this morning if you like.
Let
38,
us. Yeah,
39.
let's do it. Do you want to read, or you want me to read?
Sure, I can do it. We are reading from Bhagavad Gita, as we have been doing for several months. We're in the 3rd chapter. Krishna is still speaking to Arjuna. Well, now Arjuna is going to ask a question. Text 36, Arjuna said, O descendant of Vrishni, by what is one impelled to sinful acts, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force? The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, it is lust only, Arjuna, which is born out of contact with the material mode of passion, and later transformed into wrath, and which is the all-devouring, sinful enemy of this world. As fire is covered by smoke, as a mirror is covered by dust, or as the embryo is covered by the womb, the living entity is similarly covered by different degrees of this lust. While he goes on about the lust, he keeps going. He's really going to drive this point home.
Gets into it.
Thus, the wise living entity's pure consciousness becomes covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire. The senses, the mind, and the intelligence are the sitting places of this lust. Through them, lust covers the real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders him. Therefore, O Arjuna, best of the Bharatas, in the very beginning curb this great symbol of sin, lust, by regulating the senses, and slay this destroyer of knowledge and self-realization.
Hare Krishna. All right, you want to take a stab at it, or me?
I kind of feel like these particular verses have in some ways somehow gotten misconstrued. Like we've missed, some of us have missed the point, and it begins to look down on any kind of relationships instead of what Krishna is really speaking about. We start to then take lust as just this surface uh, sexual engagement, for lack of anything else, any better word. Um, and we take it as a very, very surface level uh, issue that we are all dealing with, when in reality this actually has very, very little, if nothing, to do with sex whatsoever. But I feel like it kind of gets turned on its head, and we look for the easy fix, and then we use that as our excuse to run away from relationships, or treat others who are in relationships as though they may not be as spiritually advanced, as a way to avoid dealing with all of the actual things that relationships bring up. And then we decide that we are going to do the applaudable thing and be renounced, but really we aren't. And that false renunciation leads to the dangerous following of another's practice that Krishna was speaking about just prior to these verses, when really Krishna is speaking about our desires. What is it that we really want when it comes down to it? Those things that are driving us, the insatiable desires that we are yearning for, and sometimes the band aids that we use to fix those insatiable desires, rather than going really to the core of what we want, what we need. Um, and we've spoken about this a lot. People say, but I have to follow my path. And so, what if it's my path to go drinking every day? And I would dare say maybe it's not your path to do that. Maybe that's not your calling, but what is it that you want from whatever habit it is that we are doing? What is it that we really want? Are we running away from our issues? Do we desire companionship? Are we looking for validation? Are we looking for some affirmation? Are we looking for someone to just see us, hear us, be with us, never let us down? Are we looking for a way to escape all the ways that we've been let down? So this, I feel like it's Krishna uses the word lust, but it's so much more than that. And if we simply think of it one dimensionally, it will do us a great disservice. That's
Hmm.
my rant.
I love it. Thank you so much for expanding that out, because I think words are really powerful, and especially in spiritual context, we use words and sometimes we engage in dialogue and conversation about something and we're not even speaking the same language. Even when we're talking about things like God or the soul or even love or even words like family, or holidays or you know in a lot of different contexts, words can mean very different things for different people. One word can make somebody feel warm and fuzzy and bring comfort and glee, and the same word for somebody else can incite fear or loneliness or distress or trauma or anything in between. And so I think when we hear the word lust, different connotations can come up for different people. And so I appreciate you kind of elaborating that it's not just like a sexual urge, but it's something more. And it's not even, I mean, it's not even necessarily desire, because as you were saying, there's, you know, desire in some ways is inherent to the soul. Like you can never get away from it. Even if you desire no desires, that's a desire, to be free from desire. And then to remain free from desire. And so it's rather, I think spiritual life isn't a process of getting rid of all our desires, but it's a process of like refining our desires and upgrading our desires in a way that I no longer desire the things that actually bring me down. Because there are things that I have inclination towards or a yearning for that aren't necessarily in my best interest. And I think you spoke it really well when you mentioned like, well, what is it that you're hoping to get from that? And I don't think that we ask ourselves that question often enough. It's just impulse. It's just, you know, knee jerk reactions, just responding to an urge that pops up. And but what's happening underneath the scenes is kind of like, when you click a button. Like I have a friend that works for Google, and he was telling me a project he was working on, and like ads work and like bidding for ads, et cetera. And it's like, when you go to a web page and there's this a whole universe of activity taking place in a nanosecond, of like thousands of company bidding for an ad and getting your profile and what's the best ad for you and making bids and being selected. And then like the ad pops up on your screen, like it used to, like you go to a billboard is like a static piece of advertising that sits somewhere that doesn't move. But like ads that you find on a web page are constantly changing. Like you go away from the page, like, oh, let me go back and find that ad. It's gone, because it's like a universe of activity taking place in a nanosecond that the human brain can't even process. And so similarly for us, like that process is going on in our interweb of neurological processing or subtle body processing, where we are it's like, I don't just want to go drinking. I just don't want to hook up with that person. I don't just want to stay in the bed all day and watch TV. Like the brain is calculated. I'm looking for something and I think this will give it to me. And we owe it to ourselves to pause long enough and really consciously start to ask that question. Is this going to actually bring me what I'm looking for? What am I actually looking for? What am I really looking for? And am I going to find it here? And I think when Krishna uses the word lust, he's talking to like, really, I like to use the word insatiable desire, like this, almost like this stubborn relentlessness towards trying to fulfill my inner desires through things that were never meant to do that in the first place. Um, and he mentions it leads to wrath, which harkens back to the second chapter of the Gita, where it's talking about that also, where it's like um, an over sense of attachment to the wrong things, or use quote unquote wrong things, can lead to an anger because it doesn't do it for me, or it's something that I can't get, or it disappoints me. And then I start to blame other people for my unhappiness or the circumstances. I get angry, and it leads to just this discontentment, if not straight out anger problem.
And we see it. We don't realize that we see it, but we see it. And I've spoken to many a person about this. Um, a lot of my own kirtan classes wind up becoming like internal coaching sessions.
Mhm.
It becomes less about the singing and more about the what are we feeling and what are we dealing with. And
Yeah.
so I often have quoted those verses because they've kind of been with me my whole life. It's like from contemplating the objects of the senses, one develops attachment for them. From this attachment comes lust. When lust goes unfulfilled, then it brings about anger and wrath. And when people have read it in Bhagavad Gita, like I'll ask them after, like, okay, what does that mean? And everybody's like, I have no idea. Like, well, we do. Krishna is giving us another crash course in psychology, right? He dips into human psychology. Well, this is how everything works. And from when you are little and trying to navigate things on a playground, everybody tells you boys want the one that they cannot have.
It's true.
And
That's the
that
story of my
always
childhood.
but it always felt like the most strange piece of advice for me. Like, look, whenever I looked at it, I hated that piece of advice because I was just like, that doesn't make any sense to my inner working thinking. um it was kind of a what you see is what you get. And so I'm just like, what, why why would you want something that eludes you for that long? But Krishna's saying, but this is the psychology of the thing.
Mm,
The more that you cannot have it, the more that you think on it, the more that you think on it, the more that you develop this attachment to it. And before long, the attachment is no longer about companionship or about finding that uh, understanding between one soul and another. It literally just becomes, I need this thing because I can't have it, because I haven't had it. And so we see it. You'll start to see it in every single place, form, species of life. The moment it's like, well, that person turns around, it's like, well, if you're having, if you really want to know if the person likes you, just don't call them for like 4 days. I'm like, why are we playing these games? But this is material nature playing with all of us. This is the same thing at a bigger, way bigger scale that material nature is doing with all of us. We get it in our minds. We start getting attached to a certain idea, and before long, instead of being attached to the actual pure idea, I need
mm,
this companionship, which means that it's not stuck on one person to fulfill that companionship. It's not even stuck on any. We can go to the supreme person to fulfill that companionship. We can understand that the supreme person can send multitudes of people to fulfill that companionship. But we kind of get stuck on one. I
mm.
need this one kind of companionship, and nothing else will do.
You think it also is tied to concepts of self worth? Because I think sometimes people, I'm thinking of two things. I'm thinking in terms of like, one, I think the obvious is like in relationships where like people sometimes, fall in love with the idea of someone rather than the actual someone. I fall into the idea of there's a part of us that believes that, I'm not, I don't necessarily think where we're at right now is what I want, but I think we'll get there. I think they'll change enough. They're going to quit that habit or they're going to grow in a certain way. I see their potential, and that's what I fall in love with. And then there's this expectation that you need to change in order for this to work, and then it never does. And I'm just unhappy, and I'm holding on to this false idea of something. And I think you can extend that. What I'm hearing from you, you can extend that to the entire material world. I fall in love with the idea of the material world rather than what it actually is.
Of
And
course.
yeah, and so there's that part. And then I think there's also another part where um I'm curious if you think that it has to do with people's sense of self-worth, like, well, this is the best I can ever get. Like, this is all I deserve. Like, there's nothing better out there for me. Like, if I'm in a relationship with somebody and there's nothing better out there, or this is all that I can find, or I'm not good enough for anything better, or nobody else will ever love me, or life won't give me anything better. So just accept it. So do you think it's also tied to warped conceptions of self and what we are quote unquote good enough for?
Hmm. That second part's real deep. It's super deep.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm asking for a friend.
the first part of the question is so it's more plain to see because we keep trying to fix this material world,
Yeah.
right? So that we can clearly see that the hope is still there. We have fallen in love with the idea of this place, and there are so many times that great teachers, spiritual leaders are saying, but this place is a reflection and a jail at that, and we're like, but I'm gonna make it better. And then when we don't make it better, we get really frustrated and very angry. It leads to such incredible wrath. Um, and so that part is a little bit also about control. I can control this. I'm in control of this. I've picked my fate. I'm in control of how I pick, how I choose what I've chosen. And so now that we have chosen this place, when it doesn't do what we hope it would have done, what we fell in love with in our minds, where we're going to be the big shot and we're going to be the boss and everybody's going to worship us, and that doesn't happen. And it makes us very upset. And it's so incredibly difficult to deal with. Now, interestingly enough, where it stems from, I don't want to put that on everybody. I do know it is there after there are some who've dealt with lifetimes of conditioning, of even being told that they're not good enough, being told that this is all life is going to give you. And it can even sound like even spiritually minded people are telling you that this is all that life is going to give you. But not because you don't deserve better. It's because this place is faulty.
Mm.
And I think that that's what we do instead of understanding that Krishna is just speaking about psychology. We start to label good bad immediately. And what does this mean for me? Am I bad? Have I been controlled by lust this entire time? Have I been sinking into the quagmire of material existence? And I, when you read something, we have a habit like I feel attacked, but Krishna's not attacking us. He's simply stating the truth of things. And we don't have to feel attacked by that because at any moment we can change our direction. We can change course. And it's going to take some time because we are addicted to this place.
Mm.
So it's not going to happen overnight. Even the feeling of constantly feeling attacked is not going to, like, we're not going to be able to stop that overnight. But I don't think Krishna is attacking any of us in this. He's simply pointing out the truth again because Arjuna is asking. And so I think we have to understand that just pointing out the truth of something, even if we have been engaging in it, that doesn't have to be our complete story.
Mhm.
We have a habit of like wrapping up our life stories at 22. Like, I've experienced all the things I'm going to experience. Everybody's told me this is what I'm meant for. This is going to be my purpose and my calling. And after 22, I've had it figured out, and that's what I'm sticking with.
Yeah.
You can change it at any time,
There
and we
was
should change it.
there's a comedian, Mike Birbiglia, that I seen a couple of his shows, and one was talking about love. It was, I think the title was like My Girlfriend's Boyfriend or something like that. It was him. And he was saying like the idea of marrying your high school sweetheart is like the most bizarre thing in the world. And granted, I know it worked for some people, but like the idea of like I'm 17 years old and I'm done. I found it, you know? And
Yeah,
so it's just sometimes the idea of like 18, 17, 19, 20, 22 years old. And it's like, I figured it all out. Like I'm done. I've wrapped up life. I was just, what you're just saying.
yeah. It's like I've
It's a
got all my
constant
desires.
unfolding of discovery. And sometimes, yeah, sometimes things do fall into place early on in life, and that's beautiful. But we don't need to put the pressure on ourselves that like we have to have everything figured out at a certain point. We're never really behind because at any point we can make a decision to shift our trajectory. And so there really is no being behind in spiritual life. I think there's a relative understanding of like a timetable that I'm supposed to be somewhere by a certain age at a certain time. And it's sort of arbitrary that we put on ourselves. So I appreciate that, and I wanted to mention that out. And then the other thing, yes, I like how um I think it is easy for a lot of us to feel attacked when we hear sort of like the material diagnosis, so to speak. But I think that I think it's really important the way Krishna lays out the sequencing of teachings in the Gita, where he starts the very first thing is by starting with the eternal nature of us as a soul. Like that's you. And there's the unbreakable and the insoluble, the immutable, the unchanging, the eternal, the ultimate, the pure nature of our eternal self. And now these are all like these are all the conditions and diseases and things that we struggle with. And so it's like, you know, going to a doctor and the doctor says like you have like a cancerous mole on your shoulder, and it's just like, no, I don't. Like, what? It's not. What are you trying to say? Like, I really try to live a healthy life. It's like you didn't do anything wrong. You just have like a cancerous mole on your shoulder, or like, you have lung disease, or your heart has a condition, or just like whatever it might be. You've contracted an autoimmune disease, and it's just like the are there's a lump on your you know whatever it might be on your pancreas that we got to look into. And it's just, there are conditions that we get from being in the material world. And I think also our subtle body as well. It's like, I'm not, my soul is not an angry, lusty, entity. It's almost like there is this, it's what Krishna is actually doing is he's separating lust from us as a spirit soul. It's like this force, it's this entity, it's this disease that we've contracted or come in contact with. And he's saying, learn to separate yourself from it, manage it, understand its presence, and deal with it in a healthy way. He used the word curb this enemy known as lust. And so I think that we also do ourselves a great favor when we're able to receive the diagnosis of our material condition without taking it so personally that it causes this um, depression of self identity. And I think that because ultimately what happens is we can now work towards solutions, freeing ourselves, getting to a better place, discovering the real us, being free from what's holding us down. And so I was just taking that as a point of encouragement.
Yeah.
And when we hear such things, we don't need to think in terms of like, I'm bad, I'm wrong, I got so many material desires, I'm so wrong. It's like, no, yeah, you do have material desires, but that's like, I also have a cough, and it doesn't make me a bad person. It just means that like, this is what I need to work on if I want. And again, going back to like, at the end of the day, what do you want? Like, if depending on like spiritual life isn't this like mandate, of oppression. It's choice based on what's working for you in life. And so I
And I
appreciate all those
think,
points.
and I know we're going over time.
We're going over time, guys. Deal with it.
I think we are going to have desires, as you said, that's natural to the soul. What changes it into lust is when we've turned from, wow, I want that, to like, but I need this. But I need it.
I
And
can't
so
be
I think,
happy or content without it.
right, I think we should really ask ourselves and really ask ourselves again, do I really need this? And if I am telling myself that this is what I really need, then let me get down to the core of what it is that I need. And so sometimes it's constantly, as we've been saying, finding our way to adjust through life. Sometimes we can get really stringent in what we need, and that may not always be the best thing for us. Um, I would say constantly recalibrate. Just constantly have the ability, at least the idea that it is okay to recalibrate, that it is okay to change and bend and mold and be different tomorrow, um, with our desires, when it comes to what we think we need, when it comes to what we really need. So it's okay to adjust.
Mm, yeah. Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you for sparking such a beautiful discussion, Achuta. I'm really glad that you read these verses in a group. I think went together really, really well. And I appreciate very, very much our time together today. We are now turning towards Kimberly, our official Wrap It Up Acharya, who's going to give us a few takeaways. You got something for us, Kimberly?
Yes, I do. Good takeaways today.
Yeah.
So, today we're taking away that the diagnosis of our material conditions is that we have fallen in love with the idea of the material world, but it's faulty and merely a reflection. And we owe it to ourselves to pause and ask what we are really looking for and where we can truly find it. Spiritual life is a process of refining and upgrading our desires so they uplift us rather than bringing us down. And then your last points are we are never left behind. We are never behind. And at any moment, we can always change course and recalibrate. Thank you.
That was a good one. Closing word, Achuta.
I want to get into the habit of reminding myself that whatever situation I find myself in, even in this very moment, the story is not over yet. This is not the sum and substance of who I am. My uncle, who just passed away, came into Krishna consciousness at 65. When people normally would have said, "This is all I am," and wrap it up with their life, he was embarking on a completely new path that he would devote himself to until he was 93.
Wow, he was 93.
Yeah. So imagine, to start going on pilgrimages after the age of 70, etc. Like it's a big deal. To begin going on this spiritual sojourn when so many people join when they're 18, 19, 20. But he was willing to recalibrate, willing to acknowledge that even everything he'd been told up until that point wasn't the total of his story. And it brought him the gift of God consciousness. So I just want to remind myself that no matter what I think is happening, it is not the end of my story.
It's all going to work out in the end. And if it's not working out, it's not the
Not
end.
the end.
It's not the end. Yeah. There's a lot of good stuff today. And I appreciate maybe the last thing. I appreciate that story from your uncle a lot. That's really, really inspiring because we're 38, right? You're the same age as me? Or you're 37? 38?
I'm going to be 38.
You're going to be 38 in
May.
May. And so, we're 37, 38, and it's just like 65 is like another like 30 years, 25 years from now.
It's a whole other lifetime.
The whole other lifetime away from now. And it's like,
another life of my life.
and it's like, I don't know your uncle, but like, I know his family and I know you, and I know all the devotees that were praying for him. And to go from 65 to 93, like that's nearly 30 years. Like that's longer than I've been practicing Krishna consciousness right now. And it's like, that's a full life. That's like a lot of spiritual depth, and like, and to be in the association of your family and to have that at his time of death, I imagine was very auspicious. As as painful as it also can be to lose a loved one. And so just like, like the word coming to my mind is like, it's a successful life, like it's a very successful life. And I just think about all the crap that I do and get into now and over the next 30 years. And it's like, turn it around at 65, And there is also, I mean, we're getting onto a tangent here. There is also the sense of like, we don't know how long we're going to make. Most people don't live to 93. Not even everybody lives to 65. But the reality is, as Kimberly mentioned, like, we're not behind. I don't have to wallow in the sense of screw ups that I feel like I've done till now, but recognize that actually I have a gift. I have a gift today. Today is a gift, and I can make today whatever it needs to be, and just start there, just one day at a time. Okay, thank you guys so much. Thank you so much. We did go a little overtime today, but it was sweet, and it flowed naturally, and we love all of you guys. A lot of beautiful things going on the chat today. Can't read it all, but we are looking at it, and we're grateful for you, and thank you all so much. If you want to join our live Zoom chat in the morning when we do this, just type in Spirit Matters Bhakti Center in your Google search, and you'll find our website. I don't know if it's bhakticenter.org/Spirit Matters or something. You'll find it, and you get a Zoom link there, or write to us at spiritmatters@bhakticenter.org. Some of you have written us some emails that we haven't responded to. Please forgive us. We'll get back to you. But you can write to us at spiritmatters@bhakticenter.org. And we love you guys. Be well, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.